Let's see. Notwithstanding subsection F, let's see, what was F? F was the hijacking scenario. I'm going to skip over that in the interest of time. By the way, the links to this statute and the self-defense immunity statute will be in the description on the Law Self-Defense blog post, the playback version of today's show for you law self-defense members. Then they have this provision about a person is justified in using reasonable force against a public servant. Most states don't have this explicit provision, although they generally have similar law. So you can use force against a public servant like a police officer if you reasonably believe that force is necessary to protect you or a third person from unlawful force. So, for example, the officer is using excessive force, or to prevent or terminate that public servant's unlawful entry or attack on dwelling, curtilage, occupied motor vehicle, or to prevent or terminate the public servant's unlawful trespass or criminal interference with personal property in your possession, family member possession, property that you have a legal duty to protect. Note, however, that all of these are contingent on the public servant acting unlawfully. There are a lot of circumstances in which police can initiate force, can enter a property, can interfere with personal property, and be doing it lawfully. And if they're doing it lawfully, you don't have this privilege to use force to stop them. And then they have a bunch of exclusions about when you can use force against a public servant. Yeah, and more conditions about that public servant use. So there's always a tension there, right? We don't want public servants, even law enforcement officers, to be able to use force unlawfully against the citizens. So we want to balance that. There are limitations on when and how police officers can use force on you. But we also want officers to be able to do their jobs, right? When they're dealing with unlawful actors. Okay, so that's the self-defense statute. And at the very beginning, in that first paragraph, it references provisions concerning civil immunity in this second statute. So I'm going to open up that second statute. And it's 3430-31-1, justified use of force. Has some definitions of forcible felony, any offense described in this other statute, meaning a felony that involves the use or threat of force against a human. Sorry. Let me start this again. So here's the immunity statute, 3430-31-1, has some definitions of forcible felony. Any offense described here, forcible felony, means a felony that involves the use or threat of force against a human being, or in which there is an imminent danger of bodily injury. So I mentioned earlier, write a bad check over a certain dollar amount could well be a felony, but it wouldn't be a forcible felony. Or residential entry. So this would be, an unlawful intrusion. A person who knowingly or intentionally breaks and enters the dwelling of another. So breaking. We'd have to look at the case law on this. So breaking and entering tends to be a legal term of art. When we're talking about breaking and entering as an independent crime, it's usually not required that literally something be broken to get in. What they're referring to there is breaking the plane of the home. So the front door could be wide open. Them stepping through the doorway is breaking for breaking and entering purposes. And of course, we saw that Indiana doesn't require both unlawful presence and forcible entry for its defense of highly defensible property provision. But states that do require both unlawful entry and forcible entry, typically they do require that something was broken. So merely stepping through an open doorway wouldn't be sufficient, because that could still be an innocent intruder. So you have to look at the public policy rationales for these things as well. So that's the breaking and entering provision there. Or burglary. See how complicated a definition of burglary Indiana has. Well, lots of levels. Starts at a level 5 felony. So it's always a felony. And then it goes up to level 4, level 3, level 2, level 1. These are all increasing levels of severity and punishment, with the highest level being into a dwelling that results in serious bodily injury to someone within the dwelling. But all of these involve breaks and enters the building or structure of another person. Okay, so various definitions of forcible entry. The justified use of force described in the statute we were just looking at, Indiana Self-Defense Statute, provides a complete immunity against any claim or action initiated by a person who alleges to have been injured or damaged by such defensive force and whose conduct justified the use of force. So this is interesting because it doesn't apply to just anybody. Someone makes a claim against you that we're talking a civil claim, not a prosecution. So this is referring to civil immunity only. And it applies only when someone claims I was injured or damaged. And that could mean family, like a wrongful death suit by a surviving family. They suffered injury or damage because of the wrongful death. I would expect it would be expansive to that group as well, not just the single person who was actually physically injured. But the person who is physically injured or damaged, you have immunity against them, but they also have had to been the person that justified your use of force. So the aggressor that you defended yourself against, but this would not apply to like an innocent bystander, right? So if you shoot at someone who's actually trying to kill you and your bullet hits them, and then it overpenetrates and it goes on to hit an innocent bystander, you would not have immunity against that innocent bystander. There would be legal arguments you could make why you should not have civil liability with regards to that bystander, transferred intent for the most part. But this immunity provision would not apply because the innocent bystander was not the person engaged in the conduct that justified your use of defensive force.